Welcome everyone to Fremmer English Podcast, the podcast where we explore English through long, emotional, deeply human conversations that help you learn naturally. Today's topic is something we all experience every single day, our daily routine, but we will talk about it in a meaningful, reflective way so you can learn not only vocabulary, but also emotional expression.
Yes, and before we begin, we want to gently remind you to subscribe, like, comment, and share, because your support allows us to continue creating long-form episodes that help learners all over the world improve their English through authentic, heartfelt conversations. Now, let's begin our journey into describing our daily routines, but in a way that goes far beyond just listing actions.
You know, when I think about my daily routine, I realize that it's much more than a sequence of tasks. It's a quiet rhythm that shapes my entire day, starting from the moment I open my eyes and decide how I want to meet the world.
I completely understand what you mean, because a daily routine isn't just about what we do. It reflects our emotions, our habits, our priorities, and even the way we take care of our minds and hearts as we move through each hour.
For example, every morning I wake up slowly, not rushing out of bed immediately, but giving myself a few minutes to breathe deeply and feel grateful for a new day, because starting calmly helps me stay centered throughout everything that follows.
That sounds so peaceful, and it reminds me of how important those first few moments are. In my routine, I also take a quiet moment before getting up, just to stretch gently and let my body wake up naturally, because it makes the rest of the day feel lighter.
After that, I usually drink a warm glass of water, which has become a small ritual that helps me feel refreshed. And then I open the curtains to let sunlight slowly fill the room, because that soft light makes me feel connected to the world outside.
I love that image, and in my routine, I also enjoy opening the windows and letting fresh air in. It's such a simple act, yet it brings my mind a sense of renewal, almost like telling myself, today is a new beginning.
Once I'm fully awake, I take a few minutes to plan my day, not in a strict or stressful way, but just to remind myself of the tasks that matter and the small joys I want to include, because balance is important to me.
I do something similar. I look at my schedule and then gently adjust my expectations so I don't overwhelm myself. Because I've learned that being kind to my routine also means being kind to myself.
Breakfast is another important part of my day. I try to make something simple but nourishing, like fruit, yogurt, or eggs, and I enjoy eating slowly rather than rushing, because those few quiet minutes keep me grounded.
Breakfast is one of my favorite moments too, and I often prepare something warm, like oatmeal or tea, because holding something warm in my hands helps me feel calm and ready to face the day.
After breakfast, my routine usually shifts into work mode, and I start answering messages, organizing tasks, and preparing for whatever responsibilities I have, trying to move steadily rather than rushing through everything.
That's very similar to me. I begin my work by reviewing what needs attention first, and I try to stay focused by creating a comfortable workspace, because the environment around us shapes our energy more than we think.
But even during work, I try to take small breaks, just a few minutes to stretch, breathe, or walk around, because I've learned that pushing myself non-stop only makes me less productive and more stressed.
Yes, breaks are essential, and during my day I also take moments to step away from my screen, look out the window, and remind myself that life is happening outside of my tasks, and that reminder always brings me back to myself.
Around lunchtime, I try to pause completely, eating something healthy and giving my mind a real rest. I used to work while eating, but now I understand how important it is to truly disconnect, even for a short time.
Lunchtime is special for me too, because it's not only about food, but also about breathing space. A moment to reflect on how the day is going and how I want the rest of it to feel.
After lunch, my energy usually rises again, and I return to my tasks with a clearer mind, focusing on the most important responsibilities, so I don't feel overwhelmed later.
And in my afternoon routine, I like to add a little creativity, such as writing notes or organizing ideas, because creativity helps me stay inspired even on busy days.
By late afternoon, I often feel the need for movement, So I take a short walk or do some light stretching, which helps release tension and gives me a second wave of calm energy.
I love taking afternoon walks too, because watching the world outside, people, trees, sunlight changing, reminds me that there is beauty beyond my responsibilities.
When evening comes, I usually begin to slow down, turning off my work mindset and gently shifting into a more relaxed rhythm that allows my body and mind to rest.
Evening is my favorite part of the day. I dim the lights, listen to soft music, and let the world feel quieter around me, because that quietness helps my mind release the stress of the day.
Dinner for me is not only about food, but also about emotional comfort. I enjoy simple meals that make me feel warm and satisfied, and I try to be present while eating instead of thinking about tomorrow.
Dinner is comforting for me as well, and I often choose something warm and gentle, something that helps my body relax after a long day, almost like giving myself a small hug through food.
After dinner, I often spend time on something personal, reading, journaling, practicing a hobby, because those moments help me reconnect with my inner world and let the day settle peacefully.
Yes, evening hobbies are special. I love reading novels or writing my thoughts, because expressing myself helps me understand my day more clearly and sleep with a calmer heart.
As bedtime approaches, I try to disconnect from screens and instead enjoy a quiet routine. Brushing my teeth, washing my face, preparing my room, small rituals that tell my body it's time to rest.
I also have a gentle night routine. I turn off bright lights, prepare my bed, and whisper a few thoughts of gratitude, because ending the day with gratitude always helps me sleep peacefully.
Looking at my daily routine as a whole, I realize it's not perfect or dramatic, but it's full of small choices that help me feel balanced, present, and emotionally connected to myself.
And I feel the same. Our routines may seem simple, but they shape how we move through life, how we feel about ourselves, and how we manage the emotions that come and go throughout the day.
By the way, before we continue, I want to remind our listeners to subscribe, like, comment, and share, because your support helps this podcast reach more people who are learning English and looking for conversations that feel real and meaningful.
Yes, thank you for being here with us, and your engagement truly inspires us to keep creating these long, emotional episodes that help you practice English naturally and gently without pressure.
Something I've learned is that a routine is not something fixed forever. It changes with our emotions, our responsibilities, and our growth, and accepting that change makes life much more peaceful.
That's very true. Routines evolve just like we do, and when we allow them to adjust naturally, we move through life with more grace and less resistance.
Sometimes I think about how different my days used to feel when I didn't have a balanced routine, and how much calmer I am now that I'm more intentional about how I spend my mornings and evenings. Thinking in English helps improve both speaking and listening, because it reduces the habit of translating in your head.
I've experienced that too. Once I started giving structure to my day, even in simple ways, life felt less chaotic, and I felt more in control of my emotions and energy.
One thing I love about routines is that they provide a sense of stability, like a quiet anchor that keeps me grounded even when unexpected things happen.
Yes, routines can be like gentle anchors, helping us stay calm in the middle of busy days and reminding us that we always have a rhythm to return to.
But I also think routines should be flexible, because life is unpredictable, and sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when we allow ourselves to break the routine and follow what feels right.
Exactly. Routines create stability, but flexibility creates joy. And balancing both is what makes life feel fulfilling and emotionally healthy.
I've noticed that describing my routine helps me understand it better. Almost like talking about it turns something ordinary into something meaningful.
And expressing it in words helps us appreciate the small choices we make every day. Choices that shape how we feel, how we grow, and how we show up in the world.
One of the most important parts of my routine is giving myself permission to rest, because rest is not a luxury, it's a necessity, and I've learned to honor it.
Rest is such a powerful part of any routine, and when we treat rest with respect, we give our minds and bodies the space they need to function with clarity and peace.
Even though daily routines may seem simple on the surface, they carry so much emotional weight, shaping how we experience our days and how we see ourselves.
Yes, and when we describe our routines in detail, we begin to understand how important those small moments really are, because they build the emotional foundation of our entire life.
I hope our listeners can feel how important it is to create routines that support not only productivity, but also emotional well-being, because both are essential for a balanced and meaningful life.
And I hope they feel inspired to look at their own routines with kindness, curiosity, and understanding, noticing the gentle rhythms that already bring comfort and the small changes that could bring even more joy.
You know, the more we talk about our routines, the more I realize that every small action we take throughout the day carries a quiet purpose, even if we don't always recognize it in the moment. And understanding that purpose helps me appreciate my routine in a deeper, more intentional way.
Yes, and I feel the same, because when we look closely at our routines, we begin to see how each moment, even the simple ones like making tea or opening a window, contributes to our emotional balance, our clarity, and our sense of connection to the world around us.
Sometimes I think about how easily we overlook the beauty in ordinary tasks, like washing our face in the morning or taking a quiet moment before bed. But when we speak about them like this, they suddenly feel meaningful, like small acts of caring for ourselves.
That's exactly the truth. Routines are full of hidden beauty, and when we slow down enough to notice them, they become rituals that bring comfort, grounding, and emotional nourishment to our day.
You know, something I've been working on is being more present during my routine instead of rushing through each step, because when I slow down, I feel more in control and less overwhelmed by everything happening around me.
I can completely relate, because presence transforms even the simplest actions into peaceful moments. And when I focus on being present, even for a minute, my whole day feels smoother and more meaningful.
And I've noticed that when my morning starts too fast or too stressful, the rest of my day feels the same. So creating a calm, thoughtful routine in those first hours has become incredibly important for my emotional well-being.
Yes, mornings set the tone for everything that follows, and when we begin gently, with breathing, stretching, or a quiet cup of tea, we're giving ourselves a stronger emotional foundation to face whatever the day brings.
But of course, not every day goes perfectly, and there are mornings when I wake up late, skip my rituals, and rush out the door, and on those days, I remind myself that routines are guides, not strict rules, and it's okay to be flexible.
Exactly. Flexibility is just as important as structure, because life changes constantly, and giving ourselves permission to adapt keeps our routines supportive rather than stressful.
Before we continue, I want to remind our wonderful listeners that if this conversation is helping you describe your daily routine in English and think about your own habits more deeply, please subscribe, like, comment, and share, because your support makes all of this possible.
Yes, and we truly love reading your comments. Tell us about your daily routine, your favorite part of the day, or even something small that brings you joy, because your stories help us feel connected to our global community of English learners.
One thing I've been trying to improve in my routine is creating a healthier balance between productivity and rest, because I used to spend my entire day working without giving myself permission to pause, and that habit made me feel exhausted and disconnected.
I used to do the same thing, pushing myself nonstop, until I realized that rest is not a distraction, but a necessary part of being human. And now I build small moments of rest into my routine so I don't burn out.
In the middle of the day, I like to take a short break where I simply sit quietly, breathe slowly, and let my mind reset. And even though the pause is small, it helps me continue my day with more clarity and patience.
That sounds beautiful. And I do something similar. Sometimes I close my eyes for a moment, put my hand on my heart, and remind myself that I am doing my best. And that small gesture always brings me a deep sense of calm.
I've also learned that the way I approach tasks during my routine matters just as much as the tasks themselves, because when I work with intention, instead of rushing, I feel more satisfied and less stressed.
Yes, intention changes everything. It helps us focus on the purpose behind our actions instead of just trying to finish them as quickly as possible. And that shift brings more meaning into our daily lives.
Sometimes I look at my routine and ask myself whether it reflects the kind of life I want to live. And when the answer is no, I try to make small changes, not big dramatic ones, but gentle adjustments that bring me closer to the life I desire.
That's such an important reflection, because routines shape our lives one day at a time. And when we make small, intentional changes, they begin to transform our emotional landscape and our overall happiness.
In the evening, one thing I've added to my routine is a moment of gratitude, where I think of one or two things that made my day better, even if they were small, because gratitude helps soften the harder parts of life.
I love that practice, and I try to do something similar. Before I sleep, I take a deep breath and reflect on what went well, what I learned, and what I want to carry with me into the next day, and this reflection always helps me sleep with a calmer mind.
It's fascinating how these quiet, personal routines can influence our emotional well-being more than we realize, and talking about them like this makes me appreciate how much they support my mental health.
Yes, routines are like invisible threads that hold our days together, giving us a sense of stability and comfort. And when we treat them with care, they help protect our inner peace.
Do you ever notice that when you follow a routine that feels balanced and intentional, the entire day seems to flow more naturally, almost as if the world is moving in harmony with you?
Absolutely. When my routine is aligned with my needs, the day feels smoother, decisions feel easier, and I feel more connected to myself and to the world around me.
Of course, there are days when everything goes differently than planned, and in those moments, I try to remind myself that routines are meant to support me, not control me, and it's okay if life doesn't follow a perfect pattern.
Accepting that imperfection is essential because life is full of surprises, and when we let go of the need for everything to be perfect, we give ourselves space to adapt with grace and resilience.
One thing I really appreciate about my daily routine is how it helps me return to myself for a busy or emotionally heavy day, like a familiar path that leads me gently back home.
That's a beautiful way to describe it, because routines really are a form of emotional grounding, guiding us back to balance and reminding us that even in chaos, we have a rhythm to follow.
Before we continue, let me take a moment to remind our listeners once again to subscribe, like, comment, and share, because these conversations are created with a lot of heart, and your engagement helps us bring them to more learners who need emotional, natural English practice.
Yes, and thank you for being here with us. Your presence turns this podcast into a shared space of connection, reflection, and growth, and we truly appreciate every listener who joins us on this journey.
Something I've been working on is ending my day with intention instead of just collapsing into bed, because ending the day thoughtfully makes the next morning feel smoother and more grounded.
I agree completely. When I prepare for the next day with calm energy, like setting out clothes or tidying a small space, it creates a sense of stability that carries into the morning.
It's interesting how our routines change throughout different stages of life. What worked for me years ago doesn't work now, and learning to adapt without judgment has been an important part of growing emotionally.
Yes, routines evolve as we evolve, and when we accept those changes with openness instead of resisting them, we allow our lives to flow more naturally and compassionately.
Sometimes I reflect on how much my routine reveals about what I value: peace, balance, connection, and that reflection helps me make choices that support those values more clearly.
That's very true, because routines silently reflect our priorities, and when we look at them closely, they show us what truly matters to us, even if we don't always realize it consciously.
I also think routines teach us the importance of consistency, not perfection, but the small, steady habits that shape who we become over time.
Yes, consistency is powerful because even tiny actions repeated day after day can bring emotional strength, practical growth, and a deeper sense of purpose.
And yet, within consistency, we also need moments of spontaneity, so our lives remain fresh and emotionally alive, not just a repetitive cycle of tasks.
Exactly. Blending routine with spontaneity keeps us balanced, giving us stability without losing the joy of discovery and new experiences.
I've also realized that the emotional tone of my day often depends on how I choose to begin and end it, which makes me more mindful about those moments and more protective of my peace.
And I feel the same. The first and last minutes of the day carry a quiet power, setting the emotional tone for everything in between, so I try to fill those moments with intention and gentleness.
As we're talking, I hope our listeners are thinking about their own routines and how they can describe them in English, because expressing these habits helps build both language skills and self-awareness.
Yes, and I hope they're also reflecting on how their routines make them feel. Because learning English is not only about vocabulary, it's about expressing real experiences in natural, meaningful ways.
Before we end this part of the conversation, I want to remind everyone to subscribe, like, comment, and share, especially if these long, thoughtful dialogues help your English grow in a gentle and emotional way.
Yes, your support truly matters, and it encourages us to keep creating episodes where language learning is not rushed, but explored through deep reflection and human connection.
Talking about daily routines like this makes me appreciate the structure and comfort they bring, and it inspires me to refine mine even more, so it supports my well-being each day.
And I feel inspired too. This conversation reminds me that routines are not just schedules, but emotional journeys, guiding us gently through the rhythm of life.
You know, as we continue this conversation, I'm starting to realize how describing our daily routines isn't just about explaining the order of our activities, but about sharing the emotional story behind how we move through each day, because every small moment we include, or choose not to include, silently shapes the quality of our lives.
Yes, and I feel that deeply, because when we talk about our routines, we're not only talking about what time we wake up or when we eat, we're revealing how we take care of ourselves, how we manage stress, and how we create little islands of peace in the middle of a busy world.
Something I've noticed is that the way I begin my morning routine often sets the emotional tone for everything that comes after. So I try to start with actions that make me feel grounded, not rushed, because beginning gently allows my mind to stay steady, even when the day becomes demanding.
I completely relate to that, because when my morning begins chaotically, I carry that chaos with me for hours. But when I allow myself a slow, intentional morning, even if it's only 10 minutes, it transforms the way I handle challenges and makes my whole day feel smoother and more balanced.
And I've learned that small, quiet moments in my routine, such as sitting on the edge of my bed before standing up or taking that first deep breath of the day, are not meaningless at all. They're the moments that connect me to myself before the world asks anything of me.
Yes, those soft transitions matter so much. And I think one of the most beautiful parts of having a daily routine is how it gently encourages us to slow down enough to hear our own thoughts, our own feelings, and our own needs before we get swept into the noise of the day.
You know, for a long time, I used to rush out the door every morning, thinking that speed somehow made me more productive, but eventually I realized that a rushed morning only leads to a restless day, and now I value calm more than speed, because calm brings clarity.
That resonates with me so much, because I used to feel the same way, always in a hurry, always feeling behind, until I understood that productivity without peace is exhausting, and that creating healthy rhythms in our routines brings a deeper kind of success, the kind that feels emotionally sustainable.
Another part of my routine that I've grown to appreciate is taking small breaks during the day, because stepping away from my tasks for even a few minutes helps me breathe, reset, and return with a clearer mind instead of pushing myself to the point of frustration.
And I think that's so important, because breaks are not signs of weakness or laziness. They're signs of emotional wisdom, a reminder that our minds need rest just as much as our bodies do. And when we honor that need, we become calmer and more capable.
Sometimes during my routine, I try to add a moment that has nothing to do with work at all, like listening to music I love or stretching slowly, because these tiny moments of joy make the whole day feel softer and remind me that life isn't only about getting things done.
I do something similar. In the middle of a busy afternoon, I might pause to make a cup of tea or step outside for a minute, just to reconnect with the world beyond my responsibilities. and those small moments always help me regain perspective.
You know, I think what makes a daily routine truly meaningful, not the tasks themselves, but the intention behind them. When we do things with awareness and care, even simple actions become powerful parts of our emotional well-being.
Yes, intention transforms routines into rituals. And rituals bring comfort, stability, and a sense of purpose into our lives, reminding us that the way we take care of ourselves matters just as much as the things we accomplish.
As my day moves toward evening, I always feel this natural shift in energy, like my body is telling me it's time to slow down, let go, and release the weight of the day, and my routine helps guide me gently into that softer, quieter state.
Evenings feel magical to me for that exact reason. The world becomes calmer, lights become softer, and everything feels slower, giving me space to reflect on the day and prepare my heart for rest.
In my evening routine, one of my favorite things to do is dim the lights and listen to gentle music, because the soft atmosphere helps my mind relax and signals my body that it's time to transition from activity to peace.
I love that. And in my own routine, I often light a candle or read a few pages of a book, because these quiet choices create a kind of emotional bridge between the busy world outside and the peaceful world inside my home.
Before we dive deeper, I want to pause and remind our wonderful listeners that if you find meaning in these long, reflective conversations that help you practice English naturally, please subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode, because your support allows us to create more of these heartfelt experiences.
Yes, your support truly inspires us, and we are grateful for every message you write, every like you give, and every time you share our podcast with someone who might need this emotional and linguistic connection.
Returning to routines, I think one of the most underrated moments is preparing for the next day, not in a stressful way, but in a gentle, supportive way that helps our future selves feel cared for and less overwhelmed.
That's exactly how I see it too. When I prepare small things the night before, like choosing clothes or organizing my workspace, I feel like I'm giving a small gift to the next version of myself who will wake up in the morning.
Sometimes I lie in bed at night and replay the day in my mind, not to judge myself, but to understand what felt good, what drained my energy, and how I can adjust my routine in a way that supports me more gently tomorrow.
And that reflection is so powerful, because when we become aware of how different parts of our routine affect our emotions, we're able to create a daily rhythm that feels balanced, compassionate, and aligned with our needs.
I've also realized that routines can be incredibly comforting during stressful times, because having familiar actions to return to gives us stability when everything else feels uncertain.
Yes, that familiarity creates a sense of safety, reminding us that even when the world feels chaotic, we still have moments we can control, moments that bring us peace and help us stay emotionally grounded.
Something I've been trying to practice more often is ending my day with gratitude, even if the day wasn't perfect, because acknowledging small blessings helps shift my focus from stress to appreciation.
Gratitude is such a gentle but powerful part of a routine, and when I take a moment to say thank you for something, even something very small, I feel my heart relax and my mind become calmer.
Do you ever feel that our routines reflect who we are on the inside? Almost like a mirror that shows what we value, what we fear, what we enjoy, and what we need in order to feel emotionally balanced.
Absolutely. Routines reveal the rhythm of our inner world, and when we look closely at them, we can learn so much about ourselves, our habits, our emotional patterns, and even our dreams.
And that's why describing our routines in English is such a powerful exercise for learners, because it's not only about using new vocabulary, but about expressing real parts of their life in a clear, meaningful way.
Exactly. Describing your routine helps you practice verbs, time expressions, and daily vocabulary, but it also helps you express your identity, your emotions, and your personal habits in another language.
When I talk about my routine, I feel more aware of the choices I make each day, and that awareness helps me create a life that feels more intentional and emotionally healthy.
And I feel the same. Speaking about my routine helps me see which parts bring me joy and which parts drain my energy. And that clarity empowers me to make small changes that improve my well-being.
One thing I've learned is that a routine doesn't need to be complicated. Sometimes the simplest routines, a quiet morning, a warm cup of tea, a short walk, can bring the deepest sense of peace.
Yes, simplicity can be incredibly healing. And when we remove unnecessary pressure from our routines, we create space for calmness, clarity, and emotional renewal.
And even though routines may seem repetitive, I've realized that repetition can actually be comforting, because returning to familiar moments gives my mind a sense of structure and safety.
That's so true. Repetition isn't boring when it's meaningful. It becomes a rhythm that supports us, a gentle pattern that reminds us we are cared for, even by our own actions.
Sometimes, after a long and challenging day, my routine is the thing that helps me let go of the stress I've been holding, almost like each step acts as a soft reminder that it's okay to rest and breathe again.
Yes, routines help us transition from the outside world to our inner world, and those transitions are essential for emotional balance, especially when life feels overwhelming. Before I forget, I want to remind our listeners once again that if this conversation resonates with you emotionally or helps you practice English naturally, please subscribe, like, comment, and share this podcast, because your support helps us continue creating these deep, meaningful episodes. Yes, and we truly love seeing your comments about your routines, your struggles, and your victories. Your stories help us feel connected to you, and they inspire us to keep making content that speaks to your heart.
Returning to our topic, I believe that routines are not just about structure, but also about self-care, because the way we design our days reflects how much we value our own well-being.
Exactly. Routines can be acts of love toward ourselves, helping us stay balanced, calm, and emotionally nourished even during busy or difficult periods of life.
Another thing I appreciate is that routines teach discipline in a gentle, patient way, not the harsh kind that requires perfection, but the kind that encourages consistency, kindness, and gradual growth.
Yes, gentle discipline is beautiful because it supports us without pressuring us, allowing us to build healthy habits slowly and with compassion.
Sometimes I think routines are like slow conversations we have with ourselves, conversations that remind us of what matters, what needs attention, and what needs rest.
And those conversations are so important because they help us stay in touch with our emotions and understand how to take care of ourselves in ways that feel natural and sustainable.
Talking with you today about routines makes me appreciate mine even more, because I see now how each part, no matter how small, contributes to my happiness and emotional stability.
And I feel exactly the same. This conversation reminds me that routines are not just daily habits, but the emotional structure of our lives, guiding us gently from morning to night.
You know, as we move toward the end of this conversation, I'm realizing how powerful it is to describe our daily routines out loud, because it makes us recognize the quiet moments of care and intention that we often overlook, transforming something ordinary into a meaningful reflection of who we are and how we choose to live each day.
Yes, and I feel that too, because speaking about our routines helps us see not only the rhythm of our actions, but also the emotional patterns beneath them, the ways we seek calm, the ways we stay grounded, and the gentle habits that support us even on the days when everything feels difficult.
One thing I find so interesting that our routines, even though they repeat every day, never feel exactly the same, because our emotions, our energy, and our thoughts shift constantly, and those shifts subtly change the way we experience each moment of our day.
That's such an accurate observation, because no two mornings feel identical, and no two evenings carry the same emotional weight. Routines give us structure, but our inner world gives each day its own color, its own gentle uniqueness.
Sometimes when I look back at my day, I realize that the smallest moments, the first sip of coffee, the quiet minute of breathing before work, the short walk in the afternoon light, are the moments that stay with me and bring me comfort long after the day is over.
Yes, it's those small, peaceful details that remain in our hearts, not necessarily the big achievements or stressful tasks. And I think that's why it's so important to create routines that allow space for softness, joy, and simple beauty.
Another thing I've learned is that routines can act like emotional protection. When life feels unpredictable, having a familiar rhythm to return to gives me stability, reminding me that even when everything else changes, some parts of my day remain steady and comforting.
I completely agree, because routines become a safe place inside the chaos, a gentle structure that holds us up when we feel overwhelmed, helping us face challenges with a bit more courage and a lot more clarity.
By the way, before we continue to the deeper reflections of this final section, I want to gently remind all our listeners that if this conversation is helping you think, feel, and practice English more naturally, please subscribe, like, comment, and share, because your support truly helps this podcast grow into a global family of learners.
Yes, and we read every single comment with gratitude, because your thoughts, your routines, and your personal stories make these episodes feel alive and connected, reminding us why we create these long, emotional conversations in the first place.
Now, thinking about the emotional side of routines, I believe that the way we end each day may be even more important than how we start it, because the night holds the power to heal what the day is bruised and calm what the day is shaken.
That's beautifully said, and I feel the same. Nighttime routines are like gentle goodbyes to the day, allowing us to let go of what's heavy, appreciate what was good, and prepare our hearts for rest and renewal.
In my nighttime routine, I sometimes sit quietly and ask myself simple questions like, what helped me today? What challenged me? What can I release now? And those questions guide me toward emotional clarity before sleep.
I love that practice because reflection opens a door to deeper understanding. And I often take a few minutes to breathe slowly and let my body relax, reminding myself that I deserve peace after giving my energy to the entire day.
It's amazing how little rituals, turning off bright lights, washing my face gently, preparing my room, help me transition from doing to being, from movement to stillness, from thinking to resting.
Yes, those gentle transitions matter so much because they tell our minds that it's safe to slow down, to soften, and to let the body sink into the comfort of rest without guilt or worry.
You know, sometimes I think routines are one of the most personal things we have because they reveal our needs, our preferences, and our emotional rhythms in ways words sometimes cannot.
Absolutely. Routines are like private love letters we write to ourselves each day, showing how we care for our bodies, our minds, and our hearts, even when no one else is watching.
And what I appreciate most is that routines don't have to be perfect. They simply have to be meaningful, flexible, and gentle enough to support us through the ups and downs of life.
Yes, perfection isn't the goal, presence is, and when we show up for ourselves with patience and kindness, even the simplest routines become powerful tools for emotional well-being.
To all our listeners, if you're reflecting on your own routine right now, I hope you remember that every small step you take toward balance, waking up a little earlier, drinking water, taking a breath, slowing down, is an act of care, and you deserve that care every single day. Something beautiful about routines is that they grow with us. They adapt when our lives change, when our priorities shift, when our hearts learn new lessons, and that adaptability is what keeps them alive.
Yes, routines evolve just like we do, and instead of resisting that change, embracing it can bring a deeper sense of harmony and inner peace into our daily lives.
Sometimes I imagine my routine as a gentle music track playing in the background of my life, a rhythm that guides me from morning to night, supporting me quietly while I navigate challenges and celebrate small joys.
And I imagine mine as a soft, warm light that moves with me through the day, illuminating the moments that matter and giving me comfort during the moments that feel heavy.
Before we begin closing today's episode, I want to give one more heartfelt reminder to everyone listening. If you're enjoying these deep and natural conversations, please subscribe, like, comment, and share, because your engagement keeps this podcast alive and growing.
Yes, your support means more than you know, and every new listener, every shared episode, and every kind message helps us continue building this community of learners who value emotional connection just as much as language learning.
Reflecting on everything we've discussed, I think the most important thing I've learned is that routines aren't just schedules. They're emotional guides that help us move through life with more awareness, more stability, and more compassion toward ourselves.
And I've learned that routines are quiet gifts we give ourselves every day, gifts of structure, comfort, and care. And when we honor them, we honor our physical and emotional well-being.
I feel grateful for this conversation because it reminded me to appreciate the peaceful moments in my own routine, the ones I sometimes rush through without noticing how much they support me.
And I feel grateful too because talking about routines reminds me that I have the power to shape my days with intention and create a life that feels gentle, balanced, and emotionally fulfilling.
I hope our listeners feel inspired to look at their own routines with fresh eyes, noticing not only what they do, but how each action affects their mood, their energy, and their sense of inner peace.
And I hope they feel encouraged to make small, loving changes, not big, dramatic ones, but simple adjustments that help them feel more supported, more calm, and more connected to themselves.
Because in the end, our routines are not about perfection or productivity. They're about creating a daily life we can move through with kindness, awareness, and emotional stability.
Exactly. Routines are gentle pathways we walk every day, and when we walk them with intention, we slowly create a life that feels meaningful, peaceful, and true to who we are.
Thank you to everyone listening for sharing this long, thoughtful journey with us today. Your presence makes these conversations meaningful, and we're honored to be part of your English learning experience.
Yes. Thank you for giving us your time, your attention, and your heart. It is a privilege to speak with you, to reflect with you, and to learn with you through these emotional dialogues.
Before we end, this is your gentle reminder to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode if it brought value, comfort, or clarity to your day.
Yes, and please remember that every small action you take to support this podcast helps us grow, reach more learners, and continue creating content that feels human, meaningful, and emotionally rich.
As we close, I hope you carry something from this conversation into your own routine. Maybe a moment of calm, a breath of gratitude, or a new understanding of how your daily rhythms shape your emotional life.
And I hope you create or refine routines that honor your well-being, your boundaries, and your dreams, remembering that you deserve peaceful, intentional moments every single day.
Thank you again for being part of this journey. And please remember that learning English is not just about words. It's about connection, emotion, and expressing who you are with confidence.
Yes, learning a language is learning yourself. And these conversations are here to help you grow both linguistically and emotionally, one gentle step at a time.
We're grateful for you, and we hope you continue practicing your English with curiosity, patience, and self-compassion, because every small effort you make brings you closer to your goals.
And please remember to rest, breathe, and take care of yourself, because your well-being comes before everything else, even language learning.
We look forward to seeing you in the next episode, where we'll continue exploring English through real conversations full of heart, depth, and authenticity.
Yes, until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep noticing the beautiful details in your daily life, because those details tell the story of who you are becoming.
Thank you for listening, and may your routine tonight be peaceful, your morning tomorrow be gentle, and your day ahead be full of clarity and calm.
And as always, this is Freema English Podcast, wishing you love, balance, growth, and the confidence to describe your life in English with honesty and heart. See you next time.